The investigation is underway who was behind Monday's attack near the finish line of the Boston Marathon, though law enforcement authorities say they are treating it as a terrorism investigation. Investigators will aim to determine whether the bombings were the work of homegrown extremists or whether it was an international operation along the lines of the September 11, 2001 attacks. According to Rick Ozzie Nelson, a counter-terrorism expert at the Center for Strategic and International Studies, the scale and location of Monday's blast suggests the work of a relatively small number of radicalized individuals. He said he would be very surprised if this were directed by Al-Qaeda. He stated that this is not the kind of venue the Al-Qaeda typically attack. Al-Qaeda tends to go for higher profile targets, something more visible and of a more spectacular nature than a raid in Boston. Attacks carried out by homegrown radicals using small explosive devices are especially difficult to stop. Despite the many improvements in U.S. intelligence and homeland security since 2001, Nelson says they are always going to be vulnerable to some degree. He said the American people live in a free and open society, which means they are always vulnerable to any extremist, radical group that wants to perpetrate this kind of thing. Boston has a very seasoned police force that was backed up by Massachusetts National Guard personnel, but it is nevertheless very difficult to prevent someone from placing small bombs in trash receptacles during a public event like the marathon. Should the attacks be traced to radical Islamic militants, whether homegrown or otherwise, the Obama administration will likely face criticisms for heralding the demise of Al-Qaeda as a strategic threat. The expert says that the track record has been pretty good, and that's what makes this a very difficult problem. In many ways, it's easier to dismantle an organization like Al-Qaeda, where you have a number 1, number 2, and number 3, and which operates from a defined geographic area, than it is to stop individuals who are disenfranchised for whatever reason and are looking for a cause to embrace. After more than a decade of fighting international terrorism, the expert says the US knows what to do with Al-Qaeda. They know how to dismantle the organization. They understand this enemy. What they do not understand nearly as well is what to do when Americans embrace a radical ideology and commit acts of violence. Analysis by Bloomberg.